Okay, good morning. I decided to record outside of my house today because I am at this work cafe in Texas. So, this is me and my coffee. So exciting. I haven't tasted it yet, so we can taste it together. That's so good. And I needed coffee so bad because I've been so sleepy today. Okay, guys, let's talk about the books that I read in July. I read 3 books in July, 3. I don't know why I put 2. I read 3 books in July, and I'm in the middle of what I thought was going to be the 4th book, but I'm still reading it, so I decided to just not include it, but kind of include it. I've kind of yapped a little bit about some of them, but I also have several that I've only briefly touched upon. Actually, let me get my notes out because I forgot to do that. Oh, okay. We're gonna just go in order. I think this is the order that I finished them because some of them I started before the other ones, but I didn't finish them until after. So the first one that I read is Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I kind of raved about this a lot, and it wasn't until after I'd posted my mid-year freakout tag and time had passed that I realized that I read that in July and technically shouldn't have included it in the wrap up, but I mean in the freakout tag, but it was too late, and I was like, I stand by that. It's still one of the best books that I read in 2025. Basically, it's like an age gap romance between Maya, who is 23, and Connor, who is 38. I had complicated feelings about this book because it's kind of weird in the way of when I think about it in real life, when I find out that I know people or one of my friends or whatever, or I just distantly find out oh, someone in real life is with getting together with someone who's even 10 years older than them, I'm just oh, what are we doing here? This is 15 years and bro is almost 40 years old. It's kind of crazy, but it worked in the story, and I think it's because the way that Ali Hazelwood approached the topic was with so much nuance, and I liked how the age gap was so much the focus of the characters, of them kind of being oh my god, but you're too young for me, blah blah blah. And so it was kind of approached in a way of being is this socially acceptable / is this a thing that happens a lot / should happen a lot, and are there exceptions? And obviously it's for the reader to decide, right? If you read this book and you come to the conclusion that no, they shouldn't have gone together because they are too young, too old / young, then that's your opinion, and that works, right? And for me, when I was reading this book, also, I just wanted to turn my brain off. I literally had just come off of a reading slump, which also it needs to be said. And I don't know how to feel about this, because the reason I went into a reading slump was literally because I was reading Lolita and I hated it so much that I just couldn't keep going. Obviously, that's way worse. That's not just an age gap between two consenting adults. That was very much grooming and just disgusting dynamics that cannot even be equated to, I think, a book like Problematic Summer Romance. But I did feel a little conflicted because I was oh, I just put down the other book for XYZ reasons. As I said already, I feel Ali Hazelwood really approached it with the nuance necessary to make it feel not icky. At least for me as a reader, I am. But I can completely understand someone who's this is gross and I don't like it. I completely can understand why someone would feel that way, because even I was I don't know how I feel about this. I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying the dynamics, and I'm enjoying the setting and all of that. But at the same time, I'm just in the back of my mind is this okay? So that was Problematic Summer Romance. I did really enjoy it at the end of the day because it was a very easy brain off book, and I picked up Deep End from the library because I was I think I need to sprinkle in more of these types of books in my like reading lists, because that makes like approaching other like more serious or more intense books easier, if that makes sense. Then I finished A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. I picked this up like a couple months ago actually. It was low-key my bedtime book, so I was reading a little bit of it every night, and I enjoyed it. I think that in some ways it was a little bit longer than it needed to be. Like sometimes it just felt like we were doing a little bit too much. Like we were just spending way too much time in certain scenes or certain chapters where it felt like nothing really was going on. I didn't like which this was surprising to me because I love folklore, like I really do, but in the context of this book I didn't really like the tangents that the narration would go towards, like for folklore, because I think they felt a little bit info dumpy. It just felt like, oh, here's a little story that has to do with like what's going on right now. And I get that it was trying to tie in like Lorelei being like a folklorist to the story, right? And we're in like Lorelei's head, even though it's third person perspective, like we're still in her head. It just felt like an info dump, and even like unnecessary, because the info we were getting wasn't even like that necessary most of the time for the book. Like there were instances where, for example, they would bring up like a certain mythological creature and then a story would be tied into it in that way. But there were also instances where it was just like, oh, this conversation or this event or something is reminding Lorelei of like this little folk tale. And a lot of them were also like very similar to folk tales that I've heard in real life. So I was wondering to myself, I didn't actually look this up, but I was wondering to myself if like these are fictional folk tales that like Alison Saft came up with for the purposes of the book. Okay, devastatingly, and I'm upset about this, my microphone died in the middle of me recording, which like thinking back on it, I think it's kind of crazy because that would have been so awkward. But I literally spoke for like 12 minutes and there's no audio. So I am here to re-record from the point that you just saw up until the end. Obviously it's not gonna be the exact same because I kind of talk on the spur of the moment. Like I have notes for the books that I read. Even if I don't take them while I'm reading, I sit down and kind of like write down for myself like what I want to talk about. But sometimes like there's different ideas and thoughts come up naturally. So we're gonna do this again. I hate it when that happens because I feel like it's more rehearsed when I have to do it again, and I don't like it being super rehearsed because I don't know, it just feels awkward. I don't like feeling like I'm pretending, if that makes sense, but I'm not. I'm just re-recording. So I was talking about the tangents with the folklore, and the summary of what I was trying to say is that it was a little bit distracting from the main story, and I think that as interesting as they were, they could have been like a footnote type of situation, kind of like the way that in Emily Wilde, they're like little footnotes for like different referenced professors or like books or whatever. I feel like that might have worked really well for A Dark and Drowning Tide because there was enough of like that world building that it could have been like a whole section of its own that you don't necessarily need to read to understand the story, but that would like enrich your experience of the story. So that was my second point. And then my third point was that like there were a bit of consistency issues, at least the way that I saw it. And the best way that I can like talk about this is the character of Wilhelm. So he's kind of like, from what I remember, he's like their current king, but growing up, most of the characters, the main characters in the book, except for Lorelei, grew up with him. So like there's like a backstory there. So in a way, like he was kind of their friend before he was their king. But as they're talking about going back to him and telling him about the findings of their like little expedition, because their expedition was done for him, like he asked them to do it for a specific reason that he has. They're always like, oh my god, he's so big and scary, like he's gonna get us in trouble or like he's gonna punish us or whatever. And like as much as that's true for Lorelei, the other characters also act like, oh my god, they're so scared of him and like they need to do this for him, otherwise they're gonna get in trouble. But when they return, I don't think this is a spoiler, but like just in case I will say like spoilers, it's a very like weird dynamic that didn't make sense to me, at least, because I was like, if you guys are so scared of him, then why are you being so confrontational with him? Like wouldn't you be like, oh, like he's a king now. And even the way he was acting was kind of weird, because on one hand it seemed like he was asking them to treat him as a friend, and then suddenly he'd be like being kingly. I don't know how to explain it, but he felt like very inconsistent as a character, which I don't think inconsistency of character is necessarily means that it's a weak character, but in this specific instance it did kind of feel like that. So that's Wilhelm, and like kind of what I meant. I think this book was like really well done generally. I think it could have been elevated and like a little bit better if it was just tightened a little bit. I enjoyed the reading experience. There is a relationship in this book that I really liked as well. I felt like it was very slow burn at the beginning, and then suddenly it just kind of crashed, and then so I don't know. Maybe it's just a stylistic thing that was like not working for me as much as I wanted it to, but still, like, I am glad that I read this, and like it did like accomplish entertaining me at the very least. I'm trying to remember all my other thoughts, but I think that's like the main thing. So I think that's all that I had for A Dark and Drowning Tide. The last book that I read like fully in July was Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is like a fantasy novel, and I'm really glad that I read it because it's kind of unlike anything that I've ever read before. So I actually kind of just jotted down some phrases or something, like basically like short phrases that I would use to explain these books. Escape room sequence, fall/Halloween vibes, living skeleton, severed heads, and then plot twist that I did not expect, but that's like less of a phrase. I think this would be such a good book to read in the fall. So when I make my fall recommendations video at some point, I will be mentioning this one. And the relationship in this book is so slow burn and so enjoyable. I was kind of like not, because I'm so out of touch with like whether there's a fandom for this one, there has to be, but like I'm not super in touch with the book beyond just hearing about it in passing. I was even like kind of doubting whether or not the two characters that I wanted to be together are supposed to be. So I think they are. Like I'm getting the vibe that they kind of are. But another thing I will say is that I enjoyed it so much that even though generally I don't, like nowadays, I don't pick up sequels of novels immediately after, because usually I'll be like, okay, let me go read like XYZ and then I'll get back to the sequel afterwards. I actually immediately picked up Harrow the Ninth. It is very confusing so far. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but that was the fourth book that I kind of wanted to mention because I thought I was going to finish it this month, but then I got super busy the last weekend of July. I haven't been able to finish it yet, but I'm planning on finishing it very soon, hopefully. Those are kind of the books, like those are the books that I like mainly finished/read in July. It wasn't many, but it was good quality. Anything's better than zero. That's what I'll tell myself for now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here with me, and I hope to see you guys in another video very soon. Until next time, goodbye.